Welcome to week 4 on Lessons on Leadership. We are talking today about the value of your network. I'm Rusty Gaillard with Silicon Valley Dreambuilders, and I have Beth and Peter Bostwick with me from You Can Choose. And we are excited to jump into the 4th week. In our other weeks, we have talked about self-leadership, we have talked about courage and grit and failing fast. And this week, we're going to dive into your network and the value of your network. Beth and Peter have great experience because they've worked both in the corporate world and as entrepreneurs. So Beth, maybe I'll start with you and I'd love to hear your experience and your comments on the value of a network in those 2 different worlds that you've worked in.
So I guess from the corporate space, I would argue your network's important in terms of understanding where job opportunities might be and different projects that you might be interested in and just getting to know people in the organization, maybe understanding more about the business and so forth. But it really has a very different, I'll just say it's a magnified effect in the entrepreneur space, because if you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're at the very beginning and getting started, sometimes it's just you or you and your 1 or 2 other people on your team, and your network is what's going to enable you to be a success. And if you've got a good network, that speaks well for your potential success eventually. If you don't have a very strong network, you don't really spend time putting it together, focusing in on it and understanding, who's going to really be a good resource for you or not, then it's not going to work as well for you. So your network really, I think, is a really great way to understand whether you will be a success or not.
Interesting. And you talked there also about putting your network together. I know you have both transitioned from the corporate world into entrepreneurship. And I've done the same thing, leaving Apple after 13 years and starting my own business as a speaker and a coach. And I know it's a transition. How do you go about putting together a network?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that. So when we talk about network, we're talking about a couple different levels, right? So you've got a close circle of a network, people you talk to, on a regular basis, whether it's every week or every day or every month or whatever. Those are people that are more influence you, and you influence them, and you make something happen. It's important to think about who those people are, because they have an impact on you, and they're also a reflection of who you are as an individual. And then outside that, you've got people that maybe you don't talk to very often, but they're still available to you. They're acquaintances, maybe the people that you worked with in a previous company. They're still part of your network as well. So your network is really multiple levels or multiple rings around you. And how do you manage that? Who you bring in closer to you? Who do you maybe you phase out because they're no longer aligned with who you are, or don't see things the way that you see things? It's like, it's almost like dealing with a deck of cards, right? You want to keep things closer to you at certain times, and other times you want to reach out to other people.
And I think I would add the piece that Peter talked about that I think is really important is that your network evolves as you evolve in your business and whatever it is you're doing. So I think to some extent you could say your network is somewhat of a reflection of who you are. And if you look at it from T0 to T wherever you are at some point down the road, you'll be able to see differences in terms of where you were at one point and how you've evolved to move forward in whatever way it is you want to shift. So I think in some ways it's kind of like a mirror, maybe.
Interesting.
I think that's a really interesting idea, that your network is a mirror of you. Most of us think about, we think about networking, and we think it's easy to think about your network as a resource, as something you can go to when you need help or when you need support, when you need a connection or information or something like that. But the idea that it's a reflection of you, I think is super interesting. I'd love to hear, Beth, maybe, I think you mentioned that most recently, but I think you both talked about it. I'd love to hear you talk more about that. And what does that mean, that it's a reflection of you? And how does that, what do you learn from that? Or is there some information to be gained in there?
So if you don't mind, I'd like to just
jump
in with a specific. So when we started our software company, I remember I would go out networking and try to, meet people, in particular other entrepreneurs. And one of the challenges I had, and this is like 15 years ago, so it was not that long ago, I could not for the life of me find other women founders. It was pretty frustrating, actually. But when I eventually did find a small group of people, we got to meet each other, and it turned out we were all about the same stage in our business. We had businesses, but they were pre-money, or they were a little bit beyond ideation to building the first product. It was interesting because for me, I had never had a chance to be in a room with all women talking business. It was like the most amazing experience. And I remember thinking to myself, it's like, I don't think I've ever done this before. I mean, after 15 years in the corporate space, I was almost the only woman in the room. So it was a very, very different experience. And so when I look back at that time, that was a really important need for me, because for some reason, it was very, very important to me. And so my network became very focused around meeting other women entrepreneurs. It was a reflection of who I was at that point. Now that I look at where I am today, that network is much more diverse. It's, obviously men and women, but it doesn't have quite the focus it did at that point when I was working with the software company. So that's a very specific example I can remember.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that, Beth, is that not only is your network a reflection of you, but it's also built to what you need at that point in time. And part of part of what we're looking for in our network is not just connections and knowledge. It's about a sense of community, and it's about other people who are in a similar experience to where we are, because we learn from them, but we also get support from them and encouragement from them. And I think that's a really important aspect of that as well.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, we talk about networking as a verb, right? You need to go out there, network, and you got to make connections. But it's not just starting off with and making the connection and handing a business card and signing up on LinkedIn and okay, good, I've got 500 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, whatever connections on LinkedIn. That's not a network, right? That's not you're not using that to your advantage. You're not connecting with people. You're not having conversations with them. You're not leveraging their knowledge and sharing your knowledge with them. And that, to me, is really what networking is all about. It's going beyond having a group of people that you can one day maybe call on. It's having a group of people that you can actually talk to and talk with and work with to come up with ideas or validate concepts or just get a break from whatever it is that you're doing. So it's much more powerful than we give it credit for.
Yeah, and honestly, just to build on top of that, when I was working more directly with women founders at the very beginning of their journey, if you will, I would talk about 3 levels of network. And as an entrepreneur, there's a really tight network that you have of 3 to 5, maybe 5 people who are really, really important to you. And those people know everything about you. And they're the people who are going to give you the good, bad, and the ugly, but they're also going to be the people who pick you up when you fall down, because you will fall down. And then you've got the next level out, which are going to be people who are close to you that have an interest in your success. Maybe they're investors, maybe they're family, but they're not the really tight, close relationships that you have in that inner network. And that reason that inner network is small is because you cannot afford to spend time building those relationships with 10 people. You'll be exhausted. You can't do it because you have to maintain them. Now, the important thing is that network eventually, or that level of network shifts. Some people move out, some people move in, but beyond the second network, which is, I'd say maybe a couple hundred people, then you have your really outside network, which is the really big, maybe your friends on Facebook, LinkedIn. They're acquaintances more than anything. And you may tap into them for one thing here or there, but they're not the tight people that you live and breathe with you to help you be a success as an entrepreneur. So I guess I would distinguish, as Peter said, that, we're talking about different levels of this. I think it depends on where you are, what point in your life. And again, this 3-level piece I'm really talking about as an entrepreneur. It's really, really, really key.
Yeah, I like that idea of the 3 different levels. It's a nice, and Peter, you talked about that, right? The different rings that you have around yourself, and just putting that with some numbers around it, I think is useful. 3 to 5 in that inner sphere. Yeah. I'm curious, Peter, maybe you can share a little bit of your experience with this, but I'm curious to know if you've had the experience of evolving who's in that inner sphere as an advisor or a confidant or somebody that you have worked with closely. Have you ever been in an experience where it's time to bring someone new into that sphere, or even where it's time to, to say goodbye to someone who had been in that, but where it starts to make more sense to move them in a little bit further out where you don't have as much contact or exposure to them?
Oh, for sure. I mean, lots of times, especially as you pivot through your, the different versions of your company or different tactics that you take, right? I mean, for a while there, it was very important for us to know more about a certain technology, right? So I wanted to surround myself with people who understand blockchain, for example. So understanding those people. So I was hanging out with those types of people, and they were influencing the way that I was thinking. And then now that that's not necessarily the case anymore, it's like, okay, I don't need to hang out with those people. Maybe some of them I still respect for their information beyond the technical side of it, but it wasn't like, okay, I need to hang out with those people anymore. So that's an example of you cast a wide net, as Beth was talking before, lots of people that that you can bring people in as long as you're aligned, and then maybe it works for a while, and then it's time to move on to something else. Yeah. That's on the technical side, right? On the personal side, it's very much the same way too, where you see eye to eye on a certain phase that you're in, and then maybe okay, well, this isn't going anywhere. I'm not getting the energy that I wanted to get before. It's time to look beyond. And one of the things that's important is not to see that as a failure.
Exactly. Yes.
A failure on anybody's part. I mean, we're designed. I mean, think about in high school, right? If you hung out with the same folks from high school through college and then working, where would you be, right? Some people do that and they do it very well. And I know that there's no way that I would. I don't even know anybody from high school. I know one guy from high school who's the best man at my wedding, but we've kind of changed things over the years because I've evolved and they've evolved. It is nobody's fault, no one to blame. It's an opportunity to move beyond.
Yeah, I like that, and I think it's also worth just mentioning as we think about this that for so many people we think about family as being part of our inner circle, and I think in the best of worlds that works. And I know it doesn't always work. Sometimes we have certain members of our family who have expectations about what we're doing or how we spend our time, or they have hopes for us that maybe don't align exactly with what's right for us. I know I've had some of that experience. My dad is a big company kind of guy. So he was not happy when I told him I was leaving Apple to go start my own business. That was a challenge for him. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's important for me to know as I think about who's going to be in my network supporting me through the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur, because someone like that, I'm probably not going to get the same level of support from as someone perhaps who's been through this journey already, who's been an entrepreneur.
Well, and I think one of the things that Peter mentioned that is really important, and that is it's not a failure of you or the other person and that you just agree to go your separate ways. I think that's just the nature of human relationships as they evolve, Like you said, you referenced high school, but it might even be, maybe somebody moves into your neighborhood and somebody moves out. I mean, it could be as simple as something like that, or in your personal life. But I think that it's just everybody shifts and everybody grows. And I think being open to that and seeing it as a progression and not as oh my gosh, I goofed up because they left or something. You can't view it that way. You always have to pay attention to what's good for you and what's important for you, and that should shift.
Well, let me ask you this question, Rusty, from your perspective. So I assume you had a level of network when you were at Apple, and now that you're not at Apple, how has that network changed?
Oh, I think it's a great question, and it's changed totally. It's totally changed, and it continues to change because when Beth was talking about entrepreneurship and the importance of a network, I'm sitting over here nodding my head because absolutely. And as someone who spent 13 years in the corporate world, I did not have a robust network outside of that and in entrepreneurship and all the different aspects of being an entrepreneur that I'm learning about. So it's been building that network. And actually, it's one of the things that I've enjoyed about what I'm doing. one aspect of my work is speaking, and I speak in various places around the Bay Area. And I love meeting people and connecting with people and starting to get a little bit more of a community involvement. This just aligns with my own personal interest, that I think it's important personally to be connected to the community and things that are happening in the community. And that's something that I'm starting to build that I did not really have when I was working at Apple, because in part because I was commuting 20 miles every day, which isn't terrible, but when you live 20 miles away from where you work, it's just the networks don't align in the same way. So it's been a journey, and I've recognized the value, and I've enjoyed the process as well.
And I think that's important too for people who are still in a corporate environment, and they're maybe thinking about entrepreneurship or thinking about something different, even if it's thinking about changing jobs or changing what they want to do. It's never too late or too early or too anything to work on that network and use it not as oh, this is something I have to do, but it's something I get to do, right? It's an opportunity to broaden your reach and really learn. I mean, that's one of the things I think that you would I'm sure you'd comment on, Rusty, and Beth, you can too, is the more people you know, the more you know. And learn about it through stories and adventures and experiences that people have. That makes it real. And that's one of the things that we really love about our opportunity, right? We get together with people. We have this community call that we have every Tuesday. People join in, they talk to us. And it's an opportunity for us to do networking with people who are aligned with what we think. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think that, and you touched on something that was really important, Rusty, is the network you're building now is very different than the network you had when you were at Apple, and that's for a whole bunch of reasons. But it's more of a reflection of who you are today in your new role. And I think that because it's aligned with where you're going and what you want to do going forward, you're just going to draw more and more people into that network that you're building that are going to reinforce what you're doing and help you achieve whatever it is you'd like to do. Because you're not going to know what you're going to want to do next week or 2 weeks or 2 days, 2 months, 2 years from now. I mean, you just project it out, and I remember being mystified by that when I started our company. It's like, oh my gosh, there's like so many things we don't know about. How do you do this? And then I eventually realized, it took a while, but who you know in your network is who you tap into first. You can Google stuff today and certainly use technology, but it's the people piece that really makes it work.
Yeah, I love. All of this just makes so much sense to me. And one of the things as we're getting close to the end of the session, I just want to play around or just have a little discussion around this idea that our network is a reflection of us. And I think that goes in both directions. It goes in the directions of we tend to attract people that are a match for where we are today. But it also goes in the other direction, meaning we tend to be a reflection of the people that are in our network. Some of the studies say that your income, your weight, your health, all of these different things are highly correlated to those of the 5 people that are closest to you. And so I think it goes in both directions. Not only do we attract people like us, but we are like the people that are in our network. And I just think that's a fascinating concept.
It is. It's completely fascinating. And I'm glad that you referenced the study like you did, and you didn't say one causes the other, because they're correlated, right? They're correlated. They're not causal. And it's like, okay, well, what begot what? And I think it's interactive, right? You put out the energy that attracts people, and then they put out the energy that you're attracted to. So it's a feedback loop that goes back and forth. Yeah. So it's important to pay attention to who you're hanging out with, basically. Very, very important, both in terms of what is it reflecting back on you and what is it telling you about where you're headed.
Couldn't agree more.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I read a study somewhere that said if you want to have the best predictor of your health, you should if you're interviewing for a job, you should ask the people that you're interviewing with about their health, because that's the best indicator of what your health is going to be. And I was like, well, that might be a little bit of a sensitive interview question, but
that's right.
That's interesting. I never thought about it that way.
That's right. How overweight are all the employees here? Exactly. Do they go for walks? Do they? So they go to the gym, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, no doubt, because you hang out with people and you start to say, okay, this is normal behavior. This is the way you're supposed to look. You're supposed to eat potato chips, or you're supposed to eat apples, or you're supposed to eat whatever it is. People are doing that, so your mind just gets comfortable with it, and that reflects it back to you. So it's
right. And to go the next step, right? I'm supposed to be angry, or I'm supposed to be an aggressive driver, or I'm supposed to be whatever it is. And you can imagine how all this applies in your business life as well. How do you see the people who are operating around you? What level of success are you accustomed to achieving? So many different ways in which this can impact us.
That's right. They talked about the importance of culture, a company culture, right? And that's exactly how it works. And you can't hide that. I mean, you might put up nice banners that say, you know, we believe in success, we love diversity, whatever it is. But if that's not how people are living, you know that, and you feel that, and you reflect that back.
You see it and you feel it everywhere. So yeah, that's very true. So.
Exactly. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's down to us, their culture, or, you know, for me, my business is 1, and for you guys right now, it's 2. And so your culture is you, and it's that culture that you put out there that people see and people recognize, and they like it or they don't like it. But it's part of being clear about who we are and who we're learning from and who we're modeling and all of that. So just really all ties back in with this idea of network.
It does, and it ties back to the very first session that we had, which was about self-leadership, right? And we're our own boss. So if we're not setting the culture and setting the example of who we want to be, then we're going to follow ourselves down that path.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and whether we're an entrepreneur or whether we work in a company or whether we don't work at all of those concepts apply. We're still our own boss, and we decide what direction we're going in.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah.
Well, so Peter, I think you have a slide, right, with some takeaways. Let's put that up and just summarize some of the key points we talked about.
There you go. Can you see that?
Excellent. It's on the screen. Yes. So, well, there it is. It disappeared for a second. So the first 2 points I think are really clear. Number 1 is your network is an extension of you. And number 2, you attract who you are, not what you want. You attract the people who match to you where you are in this phase of your life. And these are really the things that we've been talking about, is where you are in your life. Those are the kinds of people you want, especially in that inner network that we talked about with that 3 to 5 people. And the last piece about building that group of people intentionally to match what you need, to match where you are, the kind of support you need at that point in your life, applying that idea of self-leadership. And that you can look around at the people that are around you, at your closest network, and you can say, is that the kind of success that I want? Am I happy with that level of success in my life? And that's where your network becomes an extension of you. And if not, then it's an opportunity to grow. And as Peter said, there's no right or wrong or good or bad about that. It's just we all grow. Each person grows, and as we do, some of our relationships get closer and some stretch a little bit further away. And all of that is normal and a part of the process. So your network is it's a fascinating little lab of learning and knowledge and support and growth. And it's just such a key part of who you are and how you can grow and move forward. So I hope you guys found this useful. I enjoyed it. Peter and Beth, it's always fun to talk to you guys. You have such good perspective and interesting thoughts about these topics.
Fantastic. Great. Well, we enjoyed ourselves, and thank you very much for leading the discussion and helping people understand how powerful they are when they tap into the network.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, great guys. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
All right.
Until next time.